what an opportunity we have now to reflect. It's a kind of grounding that we're doing together now to say, so where have we come? Where have we been? What can we make of our experience in sensing into this eco-civilization that we see, we hold dear in our hearts, and we know is possible? So thank you for the privilege of both being a part of this community as well as to share some of my thoughts with you. So let me go straight into sharing, and I will share a few of my thoughts here. So I am going to just share with you perhaps a few, like 15 minutes or so worth of a retrospective. What have we learned? And again, some of this stuff is affirming what we know deep inside, and others are surfacing things that we may have sensed, and other things are very surprising. So I want to start by thinking together with you about what a paradoxical world we live in right now. My friend 𝗵𝗃𝗿 would say that things are getting better and better and worse, faster and faster. And I think this is kind of what we have learned in this time together. And so I'm going to be exploring with you both the shadow and the light. So if we look at this, then we can see even a while ago, there is this kind of expression of how things are. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. And so begins The Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. But you know, what's interesting is that this was written 165 years ago. And for me, it really captures a lot of things that we're looking at and thinking about now. But of course, as 𝗵𝗃𝗿 says, whether it's the best of times or the worst of times, it's the only time we've got. And I think this is the taking stock that we have here. So what do we do with this time that is ours? So some of the things that we have seen include the kind of dynamics that really make for a turbulent world. There are geopolitical, socioeconomic, and health challenges that we've all experienced because it captures the whole world. This is the eco-civilization frame. So there's a fundamental new reality in terms of the potentials for crisis and for opportunities, and many of these potentials are coming into being, manifesting. There are clear environmental stresses. There's a clear recognition now that we have learned how intractably interdependent we are with all of life on this planet, and the implications for us to maintain a viable planet that can sustain life. Now, technology is playing a huge role in all of this. And so we have advances in nanotechnology, robotics, smart data, the Internet of Things, generative artificial intelligence, which are the large language models and the Meta GPT. There's virtual reality, augmented reality, and even artificial empathy. These are being developed actively and no longer in separate secret labs. The thing is, these are disruptive individually, but when you put together nanotechnology, robotics, smart data, and augmented reality, you can get microsurgeons, for example, that can be in your bloodstream, and they can make all kinds of changes. So the power that we have for good and for damage is very great. Also, information and communication technologies are enabling and facilitating the promotion and virtualization of commerce and of life in general. So these are things that we are now also seeing how they're coming into our ways of learning in all frames. We are living in a very interconnected world, and the internet and cell phones have become pervasive in much of, not all of the world, but much of the world. And right here, right now, for example, they are in play. So what does this mean? This means that we have this kind of VUCA. There's so many different ways of expressing this, and I'm just going to put these three up here, whether it's called VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, or RUPT, rapid, unpredictable, paradoxical, entangled, which is kind of a more human expression of the same notion of VUCA, or BANI, which is brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible. These are all descriptions of the way people experience our times. But there's also positive, not just the negative. People are talking about VUCA in the positive sense, the vision, understanding, clarity, and agility that is emerging from conversations like this that we're having together. And that ways that we can also foster diversity and the intricate play of nature and dynamic and playful environments. So this is really part of both the promise and the hope. So what have we learned? We have learned that the current challenges, from the climate to global pandemics to politics to technology, having created an increasingly VUCA and RUPT environments. And we have learned that to meet these challenges, we cannot do it alone. This is, I think, a key learning from our explorations in the eco-civilization movement. Why can't we do it alone? Because each of us has blind spots, myopias. We each have a particular disciplinary area of expertise, let's say, because we are carpenters or we are permaculture or whatever we are. And we all have our own cultural biases. So we need each other to help us see the big picture together. Because otherwise, what can happen?
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is there?
I'm going to cry. Well, there's nothing else left to do, is there? I mean, how often are we in these situations? But we put ourselves in these situations. We don't even recognize it. We're stuck on our escalators so often. How do we get off? How do we know the potentials of creating an eco-civilization that we know is possible, but we continue with the old routines? How do we get off that escalator? So this is part of what we'll be exploring here. So some of the things that we can perceive as leaders of change, of not just change makers, but game changers for a global eco-civilization. We have to know how to read the patterns of change. So this is key. We have to understand the interconnected challenges of the 21st century. We have to comprehend global problems from an evolutionary and systems perspective. We have to be committed to social, environmental, and economic justice. And we have to listen and act from a place of empathy and care. I believe these are things that we have learned and we are continually learning through these 3.5 years of the eco-civilization movement. We're still learning them. Part of the problem is that we often tend to think of the world in terms of our countries and our nations and our even societies and, yes, our cultures, but it's really one planet, one home. This is another thing we're learning. We look at the year of water through the eco-civilization, and we have seen all the ways that connects and flows through all of us and is us. Deep learning, deep learning. I think perhaps the best message comes from the wombat. So I'm going to have us listen to the wombat here. Some of you may have seen this before. I just love the wombat. So let's listen to what the wombat has to say.
Yo, listen up. This is your home. It's the only one you got. This place is pretty, but you can't live there. You can't even get there. So I repeat, this is your home. It's the only one you got. Cherish it, protect it. It's the only one you're gonna get. These guys, they're neighbors. They didn't go away, they ain't even. You have to get along with them. So you have to learn to share. You have to get along. You have to learn to get along. Because they are your neighbors, they're not going away. Okay, all this stuff, the animal, water, the sky, ground, the bugs, the fish, tacos, the people, they're all connected. Everything is connected. All depend on one another. If you ignore that, you're doomed. Repeat, doomed. Okay, so listen, it's all one. Not two worlds, not three, one. Just one. So get in and get up. Remember, all is one. Okay, hit it.
So this little guy came to us in 2005. 2005. We're dealing with almost 20 years ago. He's asking us to get it in gear. We've got to remember the message of the wombat. And I think this is something that is continually being taken up in the eco-civilization movement. And I'm going forward. There we are. So part of this also is going to involve, as 𝗪𝗲𝗿 says, remembering that hope springs eternal. So here's a quote from one of my favorite books, actually a trilogy, The Lord of the Rings. This is from book 2, The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. And it goes like this little dialogue. I think it captures what we're learning. Frodo says, I can't do this, Sam. And Sam says, I know, it's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered, full of darkness and danger they were. Those were the stories that stayed with you. They meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folks in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. And Frodo asks, what are we holding on to, Sam? And Sam says, that there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. There are times when I look at the wars, I look at the devastation in nature, we look at the things that we see through the eco-civilization lens of what's going on right now and how interdependent we are and how fragile our planet is. We have the overview effect when we can see this fragile planet and what are we doing? It's insane. It seems sometimes hopeless. But I think what we're learning through the eco-civilization movement is that hope springs eternal. And so long as we take this frame that Sam expresses here, it's like by rights, we shouldn't even be here, as he says, but we are. So what are we going to do about it? Well, together, if we remember that there's some good in the world and it's worth fighting for, I truly believe that we can make this eco-civilization a reality. And I think that's what we're doing. So what is the zeitgeist of our time? The zeitgeist that we're living in now? Eric Jantsch, a great systems thinker, expresses in his book, The Self-Organizing Universe, he says, to live in an evolutionary spirit means to engage with full ambition and without any reserve in the structure of the present, and yet to let go and flow into a new structure when the right time has come. And I think this is what we're learning. We're learning how to appreciate what is in both the shadow and the light. We're learning how to see its interconnectedness and our interdependence. We're learning how to human well. And deeply, we're learning how to listen with this evolutionary spirit that Eric Jantsch talks about here. how to listen, to be those evolutionary co-creators, not just the change agents, but the game changers. I think eco-civilization movement is all about being game changers. So with that, I just remind us that this is the time to be the change we want to see in the world, as Gandhi admonished. It's not just to be the change, but to be the systems we want to see in the world. Thank you so much.